Okay, people, so the war between. This is the new film from Deborah Correa. It was written by Ron Yungul. Okay, the film is produced by Randy Murray, Jennifer Falgraz Graf, and I think Deborah Correa. Right, it is executive produced by Ron Yungul. It is co-produced by Tamara McDaniel and Amy Correa. It's line produced and produced by Lenny Messi as well. Dennis Dreff took care of the score. Evan Jake Cohen was on cinematography. Okay, it is edited by Chris Bradley and Paul Gross. Casting was Bella Hibbs. Production design, Roderick E. Stevens. Okay, Christopher Wick was art direction. Noel Nip is costume design. Hair and makeup, we have Rami Reyes, Margarita Potts, Mackay Miller, Chevy Flores. Okie dokie. So we also have Amos Carver, Bill Fultonberry, Cody J. Lee, Christopher J. Tuck, Noah Woods on stunts, and our cast. Well, there is Damian Conrad-Davis as Israel Terry. His wife, Charlotte, is played by Essa O'Shea. I don't see his son listed at all. Okay. We do have his friend. His friend Atticus was played by Tank Jones, right? Moses Jennings is played by Sam Bullington, right? The Great Seer was played by Wayne Charles Baker. Colonel Canby, played by Robert Peters. Bushwhacker 1 was played by Carson Rapsilver. His friend Bushwhacker 2 was played by Israel Alexander. First Sergeant John Baker is played by Chris Cleveland. The Army Surgeon, played by Tony Eckstadt. And Reeves is played by Abe Ruthless. Buttons, played by Levi Ash. Some of our Navajo warriors were played by Jacob Chischili, Roberto Gastleum-Ruiz, Horizon Gilson, Sage Nicole Hamstreet, Blaine Hills, Luke Hunt, Aidan Lee Tizing, and Cody Ryder Tizing. Okay, so the gist of the story is April 1862, set in Arizona Territory during the opening months of the American Civil War. The war between is about two enemy soldiers who must cooperate in order to survive being stranded in the Sonoran Desert. Okay, so we do actually have a director statement from Deborah. It reads, Through directing the war between, I learned that the Civil War was fought as far west as Tucson, and that the California Column were a volunteer force that drove the Confederacy out of Southern California. Being able to shoot a Picaco Peak at Picaco Peak, where the battle took place, was like stepping back in time. Maybe history doesn't repeat itself exactly. An ever-present current, it comes alive in fits and starts, exploding in moments of related cultural flashpoints. We're presented a new crossroads of paths not yet taken. For me, history is a living, breathing thing that we are all still a part of. Living not the consequences of what came before, living out, the consequences of what came before, despite the fact that we did not choose it, all the while faced with our free will for how we shape the future for the generations to come. The shadows loom large, but can become our guides. We are all about to choose, able to choose what we have learned. Our two leads journey through the desert, facing obstacles that challenge their very existence and stubbornly held beliefs about each other. The War Between is a film that acknowledges our messy history while challenging the audience to acknowledge their own blind spots. I believe dehumanization leads to violence. I believe how we treat each other will dictate who we are and where we go from here. Can we recognize ourselves in our enemies, the unforgiving desert, and the Civil War? And the Civil War raised the stakes and shapes this story of survival. Which, there's a lot there, right? Because, I think as a Brit, we didn't learn the Civil War at school, but you definitely heard about it, right? Like just watching old, cowboy films, like old westerns and whatnot. Sometimes they dealt with things like this. And I think you were always led to believe, like, this side is evil, this side is bad, is good. Indians were bad, right? That was it. And it's not until you're old enough to kind of read and research and you learn, more about these things, and we see that it's not as simple as that, right? It's not black and white. And this film, it really does a very good job of showing the nuance, right, between these characters. Because I think it's fair to say, right, Israel is very firm in what he holds dear to, right? Moses also, right, the things he did were for duty, and first meeting Moses, I think you are kind of lured into a belief that he's a bit scrupulous, right? Like the diary, the map, right? Just these kind of things, the half-truths and everything like that. But as we watch these two navigate the landscape, right, and everything around them, because essentially they are on different sides of this, but the only way they can survive is by working together. Now, a lot of times, like, because, we've had films like this before, right? And a lot of times in these kind of films, you have, these two people at odds, and one thing gets said, right? And now suddenly they're fast friends. And it's always just like, wait, what? That makes no sense, right? You have those films and the TV shows and books and these two enemies, and at the beginning they're fighting to the death, but then all of a sudden it's like, hold on, you like blue? I like blue. Why are we fighting? Like, I just remember the Justice League film, right? And you got Batman and Superman fighting. And then, I think, does Batman say Martha? I can't remember. But then Superman's like, my mum's called Martha. Wait, what? And they're friends. And then they become friends. And you're just like, oh no. Right? Like, things don't happen like that. It's not that fast. And although we're playing with, I think this is about just over an hour and a half, it isn't this quick thing that these two become friends, right? And even when you get to the end of the film, I don't know, like, you couldn't say that they're best friends. You know what I'm saying? But as they go, we can see the walls of fraction break down slowly, right? We see that there is this kind of understanding, this realization that you're not, crazy different from me. Yes, there are these, key beliefs that we do hold on to that are very far apart. But other than that, there are a lot of similarities. Right? We also, which is very interesting, you've got Israel, who is fighting for the end of slavery, and Moses, who's fighting, to keep it all, right? They're on those sides of things. But then Moses is friends with, the Native Americans, right? Like the Navajos. He's friends with them. And Israel wants to kill them. Which is, and there's one bit where he says, Moses is like, I thought they were, one of you, human beings. He's like, they're heathens. They, oh gosh, what was it? It's basically something they don't deserve to inherit this land. Which is, you're fighting for the end of slavery, but you don't see the irony in the fact that you are happy to take land from this other group of people, which is like, what I mean? That's a craziness, right? And the film highlights these things without trying to be, like, oh gosh, what's the word, people? Right? It's not trying to talk down to you. You know what I mean? It's not trying to do that. It's just laying out these points, right? These factors in the story which show the different parallels between these two people, which, I thought that was all really well done. Okay, yeah, I think I just had to sort my voice out, boy. yeah, a little, I don't know. But anyway, right? Um, with this, I think just all the elements of this film work really well. You know, it's the I think the acting is really good, right? Our main characters, Israel and Moses. Well, Damien and Sam do a good job of building this fractious relationship that, just it gets broken down as the film goes on. The more they learn about each other, I think they find it the harder to, dislike each other. There's times even when Israel shows that he's angry at Moses, he'll write in his diary and he'll say something like, he's young and there's something about his character that I genuinely like. There's things like this, and you can tell. It's like the body language and everything. It just helps us understand what these two are going through, right? Now, we've also got the score. The score has been handled very well. Just, it's not just the music, but it's also the ambient sounds and everything that we have. And, who was on the score again? That was Dennis Dreff, right? We've got great cinematography, from Evan J. Cohen. The shots really take us into the film. There's scenes of focus. We have our panning shots, that just helps bring everything to life, right? Helps with the impact of words and everything like that. And there's a moment in the dark. There's this scene kind of in the dark. I think it's at night. It is at night or early morning. That was a little bit hard to see, but everything else I thought was, done very well, right? And our support, well, actually, let me just say on the costume, right? The wardrobe department, right? Everything feels like it's from the time, right? There is this authenticity in, the clothing and everything, and what they really do well. And you've heard me say this a ton of times, people. But, right, so we have Israel. He's waking up. He's lying on the floor. Now, in a lot of films, right, he's lying on, I should say, the desert floor. Now, as I say, a lot of times in these films, we have a character and he's on the floor. He's been in a big fight, right? But there's no blood, right? His clothes look brand new. You know what I mean? There's maybe a strategic smudge on the cheek, but that's it. With this, the clothes look like they have seen wear and tear. His shirt is just covered in dust and grime, like his trousers and everything like that. So you're like, oh man, yeah. You're helping sell these scenes. The wardrobes help do that. So it's a really good job. And the supporting cast is very good too. Some of them do not get a whole heap of scenes, right? But it doesn't matter. If we look at, Mrs. Israel, Charlotte Terry. Essa O'Shea does such a fantastic job with that character. Like the scenes we have her in, she just gives these performances that really, just grab you. And especially at the end, you know what I mean? Like, it just grips you, man. Like, she has this kind of monologue, and man, like, it's such a powerful way to end the film, because we have these there are these moments that will definitely grab you. Like, there's two at the end that will definitely make you feel a certain way. And then we have her. And there's a bit of duplicity, but then she just delivers this, as I say, this kind of a monologue, as it were. And it is so powerful, because I think it just talks to humanity, right? And I think it's things that resonate in today's world, right? Resonate with events that are carrying on right now. And there's something to that, right? There is a majesty and power to those words that I think they have you, walking away feeling optimistic. You know what I mean? Which is, yeah. That's a big thing, right? It's a big thing. Because when we look at everything that we see in the world, right? There's so many different platforms now, and people trying to manipulate with the access to information sometimes, and, the algorithms and things like that. So there are times when it is films and TV that can carry the important messages. And it won't work if you are being talked down to, right? If it is just this blatant thing of, hey, guns are bad, you know what I mean? Like, no one wants that. But when you have a story that is, I think, seeded with nuance, that shows the grey, that shows the, realities of human nature and the power of friendship and love. And I think at its essence here, it's communication, right? I think when those things are put together in a way like this, that leaves an impact. Right? Now, it's not going to maybe make a change on its own, but it will leave an echo. You know what I mean? It will leave a residual trace on you that then gets reinforced as you go through your day, as you interact with your friends and your people and different things like this. And I think that's the big thing about films, and films made well. And when you think about this, because this is the feature directorial debut from Deborah, it like she's done such an incredible job. You know what I mean? Like such an incredible job of telling this tale. Right? Like, and also touching on things in history, like, you know, as it says, like the war was all the way in California. And when you have these stories, they're often told and constantly told about one specific thing, right? One specific element of that conflict. But, you know, now it's mentioned, I mean, it makes sense that it spread, right? Because it's the whole country, right? These things bleed to the whole country. It's not just, you know, you can't contain it to one little bit, right? There's always a bleed over and, you know, people, you know, running because, you know, a lot of times emancipated slaves would, you know, leave, right? Would go across to the other side, you know, where it was safe. But then there were these people, there was a name for them, I forget, but they would come hunting like slaves. And the thing was as well, they weren't just grabbing like slaves, they were grabbing free people as well. You know, they were just like, oh, you're black, you're coming with us. You know what I mean? So there would be that. So if people, and there's word that they've gone, you know, up to California, or it might be down to California, I'm not sure, people. You're going to go follow them, right? So, yeah, like this whole thing does actually make a lot of sense. And it's really refreshing to get different stories, right? Different versions of a thing told. And The War Between does that. You know? It's a film that is about the Civil War. And that's a part of it. But it's really about, as I said, it's, you know, humanity. About the barriers that can hold people back, the preconceptions that people make. That's what it is. Because, you know, like, as I said, when they find the Apache man, right? And what was it? Great Seer. And they find him. And as I said, there's the irony that Israel wants him dead and Moses is the one that's trying to keep him alive, right? But you see all of that change as they're longer with Great Seer. See, so yeah, we're seeing, you know, the barriers break down because they can see he is like us. You know what I mean? And so, yeah, all the elements of this film work really, really well. I enjoyed it. I really did. I thought, you know, it's really well told, really well put together. And I would say, people, if you like these stories that, you know, look at humanity, right? Look at this grey area between people, then The War Between will speak to you for sure. It definitely will. You know? It's kind of like Brokeback Mountain in a way. You know? I mean, it's not a gay love story, but is a story that is kind of subtly told. It's a story about, as I say, communication, human nature, the interactions between people. And so, yeah, I mean, it's got that similar kind of tone to it. I can't remember when this drops, people, but I will put all the information on the website, right? So definitely go check and you'll be able to find that out. But yeah, we'll put the links to the website and, the film's website and all of that information there. So yeah, if you see The War Between, I highly recommend you go and check it